6 of the 2024 college football season is officially in the books. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, what a season it has been. What a weekend. Full of upsets, full of things beyond comprehension and explanation, especially in the SEC. We're going to break that down, talk about it all here on Sunday Funday. I am Chris Phillips. He is Dave Shumate. He is Cole Thompson, as each of us join you each and every single Sunday morning to break it all down. Guys, before we get going, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get those. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. And we're brought to you by Prize Picks. Shout out to Prize Picks, the official sponsors of the SEC Unfiltered Tour, which found me in Fayetteville last night. More on that in a second. But again, proud partners of SEC Unfiltered. Make sure you use that promo code SECU when you play your first $5 or more lineup to get your $50 instant bonus, win or lose. Prize Picks is putting money in your pocket. So again, that's prizepicks.com or download the app. Promo code SECU. A wacky weekend in the SEC. We're going to talk about it, break it all down here on Sunday Funday, as Week 6 is officially in the books. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. He's Cole Thompson. Fellas, good morning. What a weekend. It's got the most 7 vibes to it. This might be the craziest college football season we've seen since that 2007 season, where it felt like every single weekend one of the top teams was going down. Guys, can't wait to break it all down with you. What's up?
CP, what's up, brother? How was Fayetteville? You were talking about it off there. I mean, thank God you went to that one instead of the bloodbath that happened at Kyle Field, huh?
Yeah.
You zigged when everybody else was zagging.
I believe in the
said
Hogs,
Plan B was to go to Nashville. You could have been carrying
Plan
the
B was Nashville.
Broadway.
Yeah, Plan B was Nashville. So I could have witnessed Diego Pavia in person. I could have witnessed the goalpost going into Cumberland, but no, instead, and we're going to talk about it, obviously, the night in Fayetteville. My goodness, man. What a night to remember. So, Cole, happy for you to be here as well, my friend. Diego Pavia truther in the house.
How's that pumpkin patch? How was that apple picking time with your girlfriend? How are those 18 holes of golf that I warned you about? Because you all said, everyone said, I mean, there's people that work in this industry that said, it's a boring slate this weekend. It's a sleepy Saturday. We don't get to see these good marquee matchups. It's going to be nothing. You're not going to see any upsets. You're not going to see anything crazy. You're just going to watch teams that are below average, not meet the level of competition. Idiots everywhere. This is where you got to come to SEC Unfiltered, because what was I preaching all week? It wasn't a sleepy Saturday. It was a scary Saturday. Upsets galore. The alternate universe of the college football playoffs have been completely re-advanced overnight. And now we got to talk about what could end up happening and deciding truly the college football postseason with teams that never we thought had a shot. It's legit, and it's not Vanderbilt. Sorry, Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia, we're going to talk about you in a minute. And by the way, guys, I got some bad news for you. I do. Diego Pavia last night, he played his way out of the NIL deal that we had in place at Thompson Tech. Unfortunately, when you beat the number 1 team in the country, Ohio State starts calling, Georgia starts calling, Florida even starts calling, everything along that. So Thompson Tech, we made him an offer. We hope that he is still willing to come play for us next year. We're still working on that eligibility thing, but that's the thing in the rearview mirror. But we are so proud of him. And it just shows that we were right and everyone else was wrong. When we said that Diego Pavia was our quarterback, we knew what we were doing there. We knew exactly what we were doing. But we got teams that we got to talk about on top of simply just Vanderbilt, who now may be in the conversation for a college football playoff dark horse.
Guys, it's a crazy weekend when we're not even starting with that game. We're not starting with Vanderbilt beating the number 1 team in the country, the Alabama Crimson Tide. I saw a headline somewhere, one of the biggest upsets in college football history. Maybe that's a little recency bias.
Yeah, that's a brand. No, it's a brand thing.
No, it's a brand thing.
It's not a bad team.
Right. No, it's a brand thing. They weren't
Train tweeting that, saying that was the biggest.
Well, no, because they weren't a 45-point underdog.
No, USC. I think USC lost to Stanford as like a 44.
Right. This wasn't.
Michigan lost to App State.
Right. This wasn't
FCS
App State.
No.
But from the, I think maybe SEC history in regards to like brands. Yes, Vandy beat as number 1 in the country. Big deal. But guys, let's start with a game that I was at last night that SEC Unfiltered attended, that being the Arkansas Razorbacks pulling off the shocker over the Tennessee Volunteers. I want to first say this, guys. Talking with Arkansas fans all weekend, couldn't be happier for the fan base, because this was a fan base, you could tell, and with my conversations I had, beaten, battered, and bruised. I mean, they had been beaten to a pulp, to a point to where this fan base, they expect bad things to happen. Like, they expect heartbreak. They expect to lose close games. You know, the talk at the tailgate yesterday was, hey, man, just get to the fourth quarter, let this be a close game, and let's see what happens, right? And then you had some that felt like it was going to be a blowout, but most Arkansas fans were like, nah, we're going to do our typical song and dance. We're going to get to the fourth quarter, and we're going to lose by a field goal. Like, it's going to be heartbreaking. It's going to be excruciating. So for Arkansas fans, I am thrilled for them. This was the win Sam Pittman needed. This was the shot in the arm, the fan base, the program. Because you could even feel it at the tailgate, guys, where it was like the fan base wants to be excited, and they were, and the atmosphere was great. But, like, they want to be all the way in and all the way invested. But it's been so painful. It's been so hard, and I understand it. So I feel good for Hog fans. My mind immediately goes to the game. Travis Williams is worth every penny they can give him. I mean, that defense, he is maximizing every.
At least yesterday. He has his holes, but at least yesterday.
For the most part, man, the job he's done with their defense is.
It's not a good defense, and he's making it look amazing at times.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
You shut out Tennessee in the first half. And, guys, Arkansas just whooped them. I mean, they whooped them physically. I mean, Nico had no time. Hey, I'm going to say something. This is a hot take, instant reaction, overreaction. Nico Iamaleava is going to be a great quarterback. But, guys, he's not a great quarterback right now. From watching him, I'm like, he is very average. He's very average.
There's a legit question here. Does Tennessee miss Alex Golesh? The offense has not been the same since Alex Golesh left Knoxville. I think that's a fair statement right now. Since he left in 22, Tennessee has struggled on offense this year and last year.
Yeah. I mean, I just, like I said, I think long-term, obviously, like we know Nico's upset. But, like, this season, he's had great games against Kent State and whoever the heck they opened up. Chattanooga. And then in the other games, like, he's just been okay. And they've been living with running game and defense, and that's great. But, like, Nico right now, I watch him, and I'm like, he's fine.
Yeah.
But that's all he is. And then you got the final play where it's like, dude.
Yeah, you
got to know the situation.
Dude, you got to throw the
I don't care, like, yeah, you can say, like, you're a young quarterback, but, dude.
That's what I'm going to use as the excuse. He's a young quarterback.
I think, and to be fair, you got to blame Heupel the way he managed that last drive. Why would you not call a timeout when you hit that big 40-yard play to get the ball in the You wasted 20 seconds.
Yeah. No, there's a lot that went wrong on that last drive. It's not just Nico. But, again, that's a freshman mistake that you'll learn from. That's one that a guy like Heupel should know. There's the difference.
Yeah.
No, I think Nico, I would say he needs to start – he reminds me a little bit of Jalen Milroe last year from a standpoint. He's trying to be a pocket guy, and it's like, dude, you're athletic enough, dude. Go run and extend some plays with your legs. I think you get more into a rhythm, more comfortable. He's not there yet. It just feels like, and I'm with you, some of it's unfair. I mean, you have Tennessee fans betting on the kid to win the Heisman Trophy before he ever going into his second start. So to be fair, the narrative on him, like, I'm with you. I think Cole would agree, Chris, you agree. He's going to be a good player. You said it, CP. I think we all three agree with that. I think you're a little naive if you don't think that. I think by the end of the year, he's going to be really good.
I did a preseason what if saying, what if he isn't as advertised from the get-go?
Yeah, I don't think that's what you see now. Fair to put the expectations on the kid. It's like, all right,
and and that's probably what it is, Dave, is that the
hype
was so insane. Yeah. But we have to remind ourselves, like, oh, yeah, he is a really young player that is playing the hardest position in sports, that even though he's immensely talented, because, again, I watch him, you know the talent's there, but right now he's not that Heisman Trophy guy.
Wait, he plays goalie in the NHL? Good for him. Very shocking.
Wait, what did I say?
You said he plays the hardest position in sports. That's a goalie in the NHL. 200-mile pucks being thrown.
Okay, all right. The hardest position in football then. Whatever. We're not going to have this debate this morning. Guys, I do want to give a lot of credit to Arkansas, I got to be honest. I thought when Taylor Green went out, I thought they were cooked. I really did. I was like, all due respect to Malachi Singleton.
Dude, I don't know how they're going to snap.
I know. He looked as uncomfortable as you possibly could.
Oh, dude, we dealt with Malachi in the recruiting process. Dude, when he went in, I was kind of like,
because Dave, you and I saw him go in Auburn.
Oh,
right?
and
that was the one drive.
I mean, we can tell the listeners. We know Bowen. He gave you the tour at Arkansas. He's the assistant director of player personnel at Arkansas. They say every week in practice, kid goes out there and just balls, dude. And they said every time they can put it, we saw, like you said, Chris, at Auburn, they put him in for a game. They're just like, it's the kid. I think he's the typical kid. He has some off the field stuff from a recruiting standpoint. I'm not bringing it up, but like, he's the kid. It looks good in practice. You put him in the game, and the lights are just too. It's like, dude, this guy can't even get a basic handoff down. Like again, when they got that big drive, I'm with you, Chris. When they got the penalty, Tennessee, I was like, man, that penalty. I hate saying this, but if you're Josh Heupel and Tim Banks, like that penalty was probably worth it. Like to get Taylor Green out of this game. I know they didn't do it on purpose, but it was almost like, I don't know. My father-in-law, big Tennessee guy, was sitting there watching it. He's like, they're going to beat us. And I was even sitting there, I was like, dude, I don't know if they can generate any offense with Malachi Singleton. It looked elementary.
Yeah. But to put together that drive, they did. To go down.
And they let him score at the end.
You think they let him score?
Oh, dude, go watch the safety at the very end on the goal.
I haven't seen like
that.
Okay. I haven't seen that replay. I didn't.
You'll see.
At field level, it didn't feel like they just let him walk in.
I mean, Jaquindon Jackson or Malachi would have scored. They let both guys just become the.
Well, I did see Jaquindon Jackson literally the moment that play was happening, threw his hands up like touchdown. He knew. So, yeah, I mean, I guess because they could have kicked the field goal. They could have ran it out, kicked the field goal. So, to your point, that makes sense. They let him in. But either way, to be able to put the drive together that was the drive Arkansas football needed to have. I mean, that's just it. And for Singleton to take him down there, to win that game without Taylor Green, also Braylon Russell stepping up big time on that last drive and late in that game. He looked incredible. I'm a big Jaquindon Jackson guy. Saw him in the facility, guys, on Friday. Monster. I mean, this kid is a monster. Big fan of him, but the way Russell stepped up, Andrew Armstrong balled out. We talked about the Arkansas wide receiver room. Thought they were a little underrated. Had some guys that could win some one-on-ones.
Broden had a big catch.
Broden had a big catch. I mean, they've got some dudes on the outside. Now, Satania had some big catches. So, I mean, listen, I think this is what Arkansas fans have been waiting for, though, right? You're knocking on the door, should have beat Oklahoma State. Knocking on the door, should have beat A&M, and it finally comes together. And, I mean, who knew you were going to get this win over a top 10 team or top 5 team, excuse me. But, man, and then rushing the field in Fayetteville. I got down there, like I said, saw our buddy Bowen on the field. I got some incredible video that I'll be posting later today and middle of this week when we post the vlog. But, man, I mean, what a time. And like I said, I know it sucks for Tennessee fans and Tennessee folks, and we'll talk more on that, but couldn't be happier for the Arkansas folks after talking to them all weekend. And that was just, guys, it was a game they needed to have. They needed that type of win this year. And I think another close, excruciating loss, I just don't know how they would have handled it to get that win, man. Just huge for the program, huge for Pittman, huge for what they're trying to build there.
Well, sometimes you have to realize that it just becomes your Super Bowl. It becomes your last hurrah, regardless of what comes for the rest of the year. You're swinging big. And there's times where you're going to see where a team puts together good overall performances, but it's not good enough. Sometimes you're going to watch them not be able to live up to expectations. Sometimes you're going to watch them shoot themselves in the foot. And we've watched that this year. There's no scenario where you look back in games against Texas A&M and games against Oklahoma State where you're sitting here and saying, we shouldn't have won that game. Now, the difference is that in the Oklahoma State game, that was just constantly finding ways to put yourself behind the sticks, constantly taking the stick yourself and slapping you across the face. That was them inflicting with the self wounds. In the Texas A&M game, Texas A&M found a way to get back into a rhythm, but it's not like that they didn't have opportunities handed to them by Arkansas. So you see a point where everything is on the table, and you just want to give that last performance. You just want to make sure that this is the one that we'll be talking about, regardless of what we are. And you have to realize Arkansas has this program that for years, ever since the Bobby Petrino's debacle, 1 step forward, 3 steps back. You get the massive win, and then things start crumbling. 2021 is so far in the rearview mirror, people are kind of done hearing about what Sam Pittman did. They're talking about what he can do moving forward. That's what you have. And so when you finally wake up, and then also when you see a team kind of rally around losing a guy such as Taylor Green, who gives you a roller coaster of emotions and anxiety and heart attacks every other play, you're stepping up for him. You're delivering for your fans. You're delivering for your coach. You're delivering for Travis Williams. And what a great performance, I think, by Travis Williams to see how this offense was able to score. This offense was able to get into the end zone, regardless of if Tim Banks wanted him to score because he figured that Nico Iamaleava, this rushing attack, would be able to pull away. At that point, you just saw Travis Williams go, all right, bet, let's get one more defensive stop and go rush the field. And they did. Travis Williams is a guy that I think internally has some questions to overall fix with this game, but that's a P4 coach in the waiting. That's a guy who I think has the opportunity to turn programs around for the better. Jaquin and Jackson, you brought up, the way this overall offense looked. Arkansas is one of those teams that you see when they're at their peak, they can be scary. They can be a threat. They can put you to your limits. And they took a team like Tennessee down to the woodshed into the fourth quarter. But also, the thing that we have to realize, this has to be sustainable. You can't just have one great performance against a top 5 team in Tennessee, and then you play Vanderbilt or you play LSU, and you get boathoused by 25 points. That's what the difference is, and that has been the story of Arkansas for years. But a win's a win, and that's kind of what you got to say right now. A win is a win. It's a promising win, and more importantly, it's a win that could do wonders for morale inside that locker room in Fayetteville.
That 3-high shell, I think, may be the key to stopping Tennessee now. T. Will may have given the blueprint. Just keep everything in front of you. I don't know why teams don't do that more against Tennessee, but we'll see if anybody does Florida replicate that this week.
This is a big game.
Yeah, huge. Looking ahead.
I'll be honest, that game really wasn't that close. I mean, hell, I tweeted about it. They had 5 zone trips and scored 19 points. I mean, if Arkansas was 3-0 at halftime, and it felt like it was like 14-17 to nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I was sitting there thinking late in the game. I mean, I loved the gall to go for it, obviously, but I'm sitting there like, man, had they just kicked some field goals, like it's a 2-score game, you know. So to your point, Dave, like that game could have been probably should have been much more lopsided. There were a couple of those 4th and shorts, obviously, a couple of those conversions they were unable to get. That game probably shouldn't have been as close as it was. But I know you're a big T. Will guy, by the way, Dave. The way the linebackers are playing and the way that front 7 got after Tennessee.
Big addition. Hell, yeah. I think they would take a Xavier Sorey over Pooh Paul. I mean, well, hell, they've told me that.
Losing Pooh Paul and feels like they're better at linebacker.
Yeah, I think Sorey's more of a leader coming over from Georgia. I think Paul was a kid they wish would be a little bit more of a leader. But no, I think they're fired up. T. Will's always going to coach his bad way. Even when I was with him at Auburn, they always had good. I mean, Deshaun Davis was a 5'9", 5'10" undersized linebacker, led the SEC in tackles in the 17th season where they won those. He always got the most out of his backer room. He's an aggressive DC. I mean, Cole's right. I mean, you got another opportunity. You got to buy. Then you got another massive opportunity in 2 weeks with LSU coming to town after LSU plays Ole Miss next week. Arkansas gets to sit at home. It's another opportunity to go get a big win. But to Cole's point, that's also where Arkansas came out before and kind of fumbled the rock, dropped the ball.
Think about the game when they beat Ole Miss on the 4th and 16 to Alex Collins when it was the fumble. And then a week later, they find a way to lose that one. Like, that's Arkansas. That's been Arkansas. I got to agree with you, Chris. Like, yeah, you look back, hindsight 2020, kicking those field goals. But you know what also is really interesting? Go back to that opening drive and how they were able to set the tone. Do you know how much time was taken off of the clock just for 3 points? 9 minutes and 28 seconds. Even for a team like Nico-led squad, even with an offense like Heupel, that's one of those organizations that might be able to strike. But the fact that you're having them to force that as their new MO, they're going to have to find a way to be that aggressive up-tempo offense. It puts pressure on a young quarterback. And that's kind of what you saw yesterday with Nico. And it wasn't just Nico. I think that's the other point that I really want to bring up when it came to how we describe this game. How many drop balls were there by wide receivers? How many
hurted receiver too?
How many opportunities did we watch as somebody like a Squirrel White would get a gain of like 7, but then immediately go down? How many times did we watch as a Chris Brazzell was trying to go ahead and hit the outside corner and the ball was slightly out of reach, but it didn't really matter because he was going down and it was going to be a 4th down stop? It was an overall really underwhelming and I would say unprepared performance by this offense. Really, really bad overall underwhelming performance by what we saw from Josh Heupel. I'm not ready to say that Alex Golesh was that big of a difference maker for the team, but still, you got to realize that that number one rushing attack, that number one passing attack, that number one scoring attack, it was there, but it's also there the way that it was for Ole Miss against teams that were completely inferior and they just took advantage and the starters were out by the start of the third quarter.
Guys, Tennessee's got some real problems on the offensive line. They've got, I mean, Arkansas was living in that backfield. And I mean, even in the running game, I mean, Tennessee popped off a couple big ones, but it's not like they ran.
Arkansas's been all year pretty good up front defensively.
That's the thing, yeah.
Line standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to Tennessee. I mean, Glenn Ellerby, their offensive line coach. I mean, you look at it, they don't recruit. They're more of a system offensive line. I mean, they run they just run the football like most teams, but really Tennessee just off a numbers-based game. If you have 5 or 6 guys on the offensive line, they don't go recruit. Now, granted, you go look at the rankings, they'll have the number 1 offensive tackle committed to them. But I'd heard through people, a lot of the other top teams passed up on that guy because he was just wanting NIL. Tennessee hasn't recruited at the level of the Georgia. And I even think Alabama, towards the back end of Saban's, kind of missed on some offensive line evaluations.
They've 100% missed on some offensive line.
From a standpoint of Tennessee isn't recruiting elite dudes on the offensive line. They're more system-based. So when they go face other dudes across from them, you can kind of get them a little confuzzled a little bit. You can get them a little
and
confuzzled.
to the point Kublick made on our show a few weeks ago, like offensive line play is
awful.
It's bad across the
board. It goes
board.
back to high school now. I mean,
it's bad across the board. But I just, you know, guys, I think this offense for Tennessee that was once maybe thought of as it could be one of the best in the country, or maybe the best in the SEC. Nico's a young quarterback. Offensive line is struggling. Dylan Sampson's a legit player. Like Dylan Sampson, I mean, he's the backbone. He was their offense.
Bishop's turned into a decent backup for him, Sean Bishop.
Yeah,
now, Cooper Mays looked hurt. He was limping around.
I did notice that. I did notice Mays.
They weren't fully healthy. That's for dang sure. You can tell that.
Their fan base too, guys, talking to them, even going to this game, like they've been underwhelmed with the receiver position. And that is something I would have just never, but they're like, we haven't really had that guy like emerge. They're like, where are the receivers? Like, where are these studs that we thought we had? They're not.
And we talked about it. They're banged up. So I think going into next week, they're going to have like Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb starting for them. They're young, talented.
Their number 1 receiver is not playing right now, and it still bothers me. Still bothers me that Mike Matthews is not seeing more reps. It still bothers me because I thought
he was in at the very end that last drive because he had to be. They were so beat up.
I thought that when he was going through the recruiting process, and we were talking about guys like Cam Coleman, like Ryan Williams, like Ryan Wingo, Mike Matthews was kind of flying under the radar. And I still believe that by the time that they depart for the NFL, one of the best duos we will see in Tennessee history is Mike Matthews and Nico Iamaleava. But you get to that point where you kind of saw with Ryan Wingo down at Texas, where you're seeing Ryan Williams right now. Yeah, we have other guys on the roster, but you're our best punch. Tennessee is getting to that point where they may have to start saying to themselves, if we think that Matthews is better than what we're seeing out of Brazel, what we're seeing out of Thornton, what we're seeing out of McCoy, we got to get him on the field. Because the last thing that we can afford to do, especially in the next week's matchup against a team like Florida, a team that has owned us. I'm sorry, Tennessee fans. You are a better team. You are 100% a better team than Florida. They have owned you. You're 8-2. They are 8-2 against you in the last decade. You can't afford to lose that game and then set up what is going to be a winner-take-all third Saturday in October. And what's so mind-boggling, and I know that we have some Tennessee fans in the chat. Good morning, Paul. It's always great to see you. The thing that is so bothering is that you heard some Tennessee fans afterwards say, well, we just got a massive win against Oklahoma. We just got a marquee win on the road against Oklahoma. What are we going to look like when we play Alabama? And you're like, whoa, you still have Arkansas and you still have Tennessee. You can't afford to start thinking too far ahead after the two-decade drought that has been volunteer sad syndrome. We know what that place is like underneath Butch Jones, underneath the likes of Derek Dooley, the Lane Kiffin, hop, skip, and a jump, the unfortunate Jeremy Pruitt era. We get it. Like, we get it. You can't jump that far ahead to third Saturday in October when you have these two games. And you got to start finding some dudes. You have to start finding some people who are going to take that next step forward and be that difference maker for you.
Yeah, I think it's time to say they get on me. I think Heupel has a road game problem. He does. They every year he drops a road game that you really have no business.
Because even Oklahoma, I'm not taking anything away from the Oklahoma game, but they finally played a team that had somewhat of a pulse offensively.
Yeah,
and I know Arkansas wasn't great, but I mean, Oklahoma was no more than warm bodies out there. I mean, it really, and I'm just saying this was their stiffest test yet. I really believe that. Like, I think Arkansas is a better football team than Oklahoma.
Right now, for sure.
Yeah, right now, for sure. Right now.
God, you guys are going to hate me next week.
You know what, Dave and Cole, you know what jumps out looking back at the stats? Because I was like, let me double check this. Arkansas. And this is what's going to make Hog fans rip their hair out when they look at Oklahoma State and A&M. Arkansas in this game against Tennessee, they did one simple thing that led them to victory.
I know what it is, too.
0 turnovers.
Yep.
They didn't shoot themselves in the foot. They weren't perfect. They were far from perfect. But they just didn't get in their own way and just let the game play. They didn't have that back-breaking turnover to undo everything they had done.
You're right. Football's not hard.
It's not complicated.
If you go out there and do not turn the ball over and you keep it to 5 to 6 penalties in a game and you're a decent team on paper, you have decent coaches, you're going to have a chance every week to probably go win 90% of your football games. It's if you go play another team, it's decent, you turn the football over, commit penalties, you can lose football games. Like Arkansas is proof of that. Alabama was proof of that yesterday.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You can't pull the home upset, especially turning the football over. They did not. They played efficiently. That's why they won the football game. And they outplayed Tennessee.
You guys realize that if they don't have 3 turnovers between Texas A&M and Oklahoma State, they currently are sitting at 6-0.
Yeah.
There is a reality where Arkansas is actually 3-0 in conference play and leading the SEC on October Sunday morning. There is a real reality.
I mean, just imagine
if we just played 30 minutes of football, just first halves of football, Arkansas would be number 1 in the country. Right?
Arkansas would be a top 5 team in the country, without a doubt.
Yeah.
If the sport was only 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I will say this. After what we saw yesterday, and again, hindsight's 20/20, but every single game in the SEC now feels like it has to be a must-watch because there is no margin of error, especially if you give a B-worthy performance.
Y'all tell me if I'm to Cole's point. I think Mississippi State's the only team you go in every week and you're kind of just like, yeah, I'd be a little surprised if they pull off a win against someone like in that.
I'll tell you this, Dave, to your point, though. I look at every game now more critically than before. I don't know how that sounds because I feel like I was looking at it critically, but now I feel like I need to start thinking more outside the box. I'm like, you know what? I need to get a little more creative in my predictions and my thoughts on these games because the unexplainable, it feels like, is happening. So, guys, on that note, we'll get off of Fayetteville, by the way. Again, I want to shout out Arkansas football. Shout out to Dave, too. But thank you for the love from the Arkansas faithful and obviously Arkansas football as a whole. I know they're tuned in. We're celebrating with you. Appreciate it for the ball fans. Y'all were great, too. Y'all got some shit to figure out. Guys, speaking of the unexplainable, let's go to Nashville.
Oh, God.
Vanderbilt beats the number 1 ranked. Guys, we were sitting here a week ago today talking about Bama beating Georgia in the game of the year. And now they just lost to Vandy. The goalposts are in the Cumberland River. I got a video from a guy this morning of him throwing the goalpost in the river in Nashville. I got texts from my buddy that works for Vandy football. Chris, the whole team's down at Barstool, Nashville, going crazy, celebrating. I was like, you know what? As they should.
Yeah.
They have to cancel school on Monday.
Diego Pavia and his brother apparently were out at Barstool, Nashville, just
causing
a scene, Cole. Doing QB1 things, Cole. QB1 things.
Yeah, you guys understand how you guys understand when I had to do the live reaction. Naturally, we didn't plan for it. So we did 5 live reactions yesterday. Usually we do 4 live reactions. I decided to go solo and just say, you know what? We got to talk about it. We have to talk about it. I was so conflicted throughout that entire thing because of it's Bama. Naturally, I hide my fandom. And I do. I think I do a pretty damn good job. I think I do a pretty overall solid way of talking about Alabama as a graduate. But I did not hide my love for Diego Pavia. I have not hidden my love for Diego Pavia for weeks now. If anybody is starting to talk a little bit of mad smack, I retweeted stuff from weeks ago when I said, sell your Pavia stock. I will invest in it tonight. I will invest in it tomorrow. I will be a millionaire. And you want to know why? Because there is something about a kid that just has that moxie, just has that energy, just has that aura, just simply has that I don't give a flying care in the possibilities of what could go wrong. I'm going to go out swinging, and I'm going to give you my best punch. And I'm not afraid to take that hit. I'm not afraid to lower my shoulder and be the blower and be the crushing blow, not getting the crushing blow. That's him. And I knew he was going to win an SEC game. Who in the hell, by the way, who in the hell actually thought that it was going to be against Alabama? Nobody. You are lying.
Hey, that Vanderbilt 0.5 SEC win total would hit yesterday if you took it in the offseason.
Dude,
yeah,
their overall win total hit in the offseason.
Yeah, the overall win their over-under was 2.5.
SEC was a half a game, which I guess is 0 to 1.
SEC was half a game. Wow.
Yeah.
But they hit both their totals against the number 1 team in the country. Vanderbilt. Guys, Vanderbilt is a couple of plays away from being undefeated. They're a made field goal and a third overtime, and they're not giving up a defensive touchdown after Pavia does it again down in Atlanta against Georgia State from also being undefeated.
Yeah, 2 top 10.
What are we living in right now?
And I want to say this too, Cole. Dave and I were talking about this just before you jumped on, before we went live. This was not a fluke.
No.
Vandy whooped that ass. I mean,
they were up. Sorry. I got a weird feeling in the game. I had it on my phone when I was in Sanford. When they went down and scored that first drive, I was like, I'm not going to be bold enough to say I thought they were going to straight up win that point. I was like, yeah, this game's going to be close, though. Like, you get a feel. I mean, give Barton Simmons, Clark Lee, Tim Beck, and them credit. And I think this is a total, no one will bring this up. People will talk about Chip Kelly going to Ohio State as the biggest hire in the offseason from an assistant coach standpoint. Clark Lee going out to hire Tim Beck. Again, I don't think Vanderbilt's going to end up making the play. They'd have to win out. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they could. The real shot would be, do they get to a bowl game? I think that's real. But I don't think they'll be in the playoff conversation. But again, because most of the national media only talks about the college football playoff, it won't be talked about. But Tim Beck, Clark Lee going to hire Tim Beck may be the hire of the whole offseason from a changing perspective of the league. I mean, again, they totally just shook up the SEC championship race. Yeah. I mean, Alabama still may win out, but they shook it up. And then give Clark Lee credit. He goes and just promotes himself to the DC and figures it out. And, I mean, first of all, Barton Simmons, good buddy, know him from my side of things, general manager of Vanderbilt.
Such a smart hire a few years ago.
Dude, I was in the same boat. We were at Kansas building a roster. It's tough to go every week when you're building that, especially in the SEC, to go take poundings after poundings every week. It's just like a mental psyche thing, just from a staff standpoint. We think we're doing this the right way, but it's just a hard job. I mean, it's good for them. I mean, again, I'm an Alabama alum. Again, I cheer for Alabama's on Saturdays. I'm not going to hide it. But you do feel good for him, Clark Lee, who are good people. Clark Lee, also a Mike Elko tree guy.
Clark Lee's off the hot seat, right? Clark Lee's off the hot seat.
I don't think he was on it.
He was
that was the chatter of the offseason.
Dude. I mean, give them credit. You're happy for them. You go build a roster. Like when I was at Kansas, you start to see that flourish at Kansas. I mean, granted, they're not good this year, but the last 2 years with the players we signed, they were. That's got to be the same feeling Barton Simmons has. It's like, whew, man, like I see the fruit of my labor, and Clark Lee too, paying off. You're happy for people like that because there are good people in that staff. So you're fired up for them. I mean, Jesus, I could go freaking for days talking about for Alabama. I mean, the worst defensive performance in the program's history since 2001 LSU, where Rohan Davey and Josh Reed, I still think, are throwing balls in Bryant-Denny Stadium. And then this one, that's the 2 worst. I never thought in my lifetime Vanderbilt would go put up 34 points on an Alabama defense. Kane Warback, dude's in trouble. Yeah.
Here's what I will say before, and I don't want to take too much time because I know we got to talk about Alabama, but I thought it was such a smart game plan on how they controlled the tempo of that matchup. And also,
we can set it.
Dude,
yeah, I'm going to limit this game to 10 possessions.
42 to 18 minutes.
People want to talk about Bama's offense. And again, Bama's offense looked a little bit like last year. It's a little bit, hey, it's just hope Jeremy Bernard or Ryan Williams bails us out here a little bit. But Bama scored on every possession except the one where Ryan Williams drops the third down ball that he catches 9 times out of 10. Jalen Milroe's tip pick 6, and then the strip fumble. Every time they had a chance to extend, they scored. And this game is totally on the defense.
No, it is. But at the same time, I think it's a testament of the offense of what you saw from Vanderbilt. And more importantly, how you saw everyone step up, whether it was Cedric Alexander, whether it was Eli Stowers, whether it was JL Skinner, whether it was Skinner, whoever it was, they did such a good job of playing keep away. And also, I'm sorry, I have to go back to the person that I claimed. And I claimed it, and by the way, I don't do this bit because of I actually just want to be different. I do it because of I saw Diego Pavia march on into Jordan-Hare Stadium last year and kick the crap out of Auburn. The fact that Diego Pavia stepped up every time they needed a big play, that speaks volume of straight dropping your nuts and not being afraid of whoever is the competition in front of you. And there are plenty of programs currently in college football across the landscape that are sitting here this morning going, what did we not see to bring him on in? Because of imagine your season with that type of mentality, that type of persona, and more importantly, that type of gall to not care who is your opponent. A faceless name where you're watching as players rush the field where construction is going on. That is a once-in-a-lifetime experience because you're never going to see construction going on in a stadium and players be capitalizing on in and also construction workers joining in on the fun. What type of season would you have if you just went and got Diego Pavia for New Mexico State? I thought it was a great performance. I 100% thought it was the overall game that you want to see and the way to be able to capitalize. And you're right, Dave. That's on the defense. That's not on the offense. Ryan Williams, who, shameless plug, 17 years old, got to throw it in every single episode, found his way into the end zone. Jalen Miller found his way into the end zone. The run game was able to be, I think, a little bit more potent. It was an overall performance that you want to see from the offense that gave you kind of hope in a bad showcase. Offensively, they get a B, but defensively, I'm sorry. Like, there is a difference between changing cultures and changing programs. Kalen DeBoer, in one night, in really the last 6 quarters, has burnt all of the ego, all of the good graces, all of the high hopes and expectations, and kind of that overall nice little feeling down in Tuscaloosa. He's burnt it. And what's crazy is a week ago, he had the biggest win of the college football season, and it was against the number 1 team in the country by most people's standards.
Think about where, to your point, Cole, think about where we were halftime of the Georgia game, Bama-Georgia game, to now. Like you said, those last 6 quarters, who has played worse defensively than Alabama? The last 6 quarters. I mean, again, Vandy went 12-18.
Totally out-schemed and looked like you never even prepared for it. Yeah, give Diego Pavia his flowers and stuff. Phenomenal job. Only had 4 incompletions on the day. But dude, you looked like you didn't even prepare for this.
No,
I mean it looked rough. Like again, I mean our guy Big Low's talking here. Who was it? Somebody mentioned it. Yeah, I mean somebody mentioned it in the comments. Right? It's just a spread option, dude. You account somebody for Diego Pavia. You account someone for the running back. You account somebody for the puller. That's it. It's not that difficult to defend. It's really not. Like, but yeah, I mean Bama again. 3 critical turnovers, stuff you wouldn't have seen it again. I don't know who the hell was comparing Kalen DeBoer. No, it's nothing against Kalen DeBoer to Nick Saban. I don't know who the hell would even be bringing that up. But the thing you don't get is Bama gets off the field and you have 2 number 2s on the field on a punt and extend the drive. That's essentially a turnover to me. Vanderbilt goes down and scores. You have a personal foul, roughing the passer. Soft or what? We know, hey, you got to tag off the quarterback in today's time or you're putting yourself in a spot to be getting that called. Bama just an undisciplined team. Even at the end of the game, I'm disappointed. Hell, I worked in that building for 3 years. Like it's a little, even guys like Malachi Moore, who Nick
that was bad.
Going to kick a football when you're losing, you refuse to come out of the game when your defense coordinator is trying to pull you off. That's stuff that you're a little bit like, yeah, you're not used to seeing it. That's not the standard. I'm not trying to sit here and say that's not the Bama way. I hate saying that, but again, somebody that's worked in that building for a couple of years, that kind of sits. Dude, you got your ass kicked. Like you said, Chris, to start the show, we were texting about it. It wasn't a fluke. Vanderbilt was up the whole game. Yesterday, the better team won. Is Vanderbilt probably the best team 9 out of the other 10? It's not trying to sound like Hugh Freeze here. No, probably not. But yesterday, it really wasn't even that close. But that's the stuff. If you're an Alabama fan, you're a little bit sitting there like, man, dude, we're committing penalties at an all-time rate. We're pulling a Billy Napier against Utah last year. We got the same number out on the field on a punt that gives them the ball back. We're having one of our leaders, who's a fifth-year guy, been on the team since 2020, going to kick the snap when they're kneeling the ball, refuses to come out of the game. That's just – it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back this week. I think Kane Womack's in hot water, though. I think people are kind of a little over that.
The Malachi Moore stuff.
And I think Kane Womack – let me – one last thing. It's his – the thing that bothered me with that hire a little bit, you hired your friend from when you were both at Indiana. You can't hire friends. You can't bring friends into business. It's like Kane Womack has this chip on his shoulder that, hey, my dad's offense, his dad's Dave Womack, who was the DC for Hugh Freeze for years at Ole Miss. They run the traditional 4-2-5 swarm defense. It's like he's trying to make a point like, no, my dad's defense couldn't work in the SEC. And he refuses to adjust. There was no adjustments in the second half. And I was like, I thought there would be adjustments because you can make easy adjustments off that spread option, especially when you have the better personnel. I like to get more in the in-depth of the X's and O's of the thing, more than just the narratives of Vanderbilt wanted it more than Alabama, but probably some of it is true. But it's just you go back and watch that game, you're sitting there, you're like, dude, this is one of the worst defensive performance, if not the worst, outside of 2001 LSU that I can remember. Maybe throw in 2018 Clemson in the national championship game. But even Bama replaced Taj LeBoy's the OC DC in the middle of the year.
What I will say real fast, Chris, is Dave's talking over here about how Vanderbilt might make a bowl game. You beat the number 1 team in the country for the first time in program history. I don't care if you go 3-9. You're in a bowl game, in my opinion. Like you're in a bowl game. Screw out what records say. That's earned a bowl game.
Make a bowl game. There are some SEC teams that better be on high alert when they play Vandy.
Next week, Kentucky should be on high alert.
Yeah, Kentucky, Vandy. Dude. If I'm an Auburn fan, I'm terrified. If I'm a South Carolina fan, I'm terrified.
They were about 9.5. It opened up.
Did it already open up? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
if I'm an Auburn fan, I'm just
terrified.
I am praying.
Let's be honest. It's not just I know we're salivating over Vandy. It's everybody in the league except Mississippi State. And I'd say South Carolina's in that conversation closer to Mississippi State too. I don't think South Carolina can go beat anybody on a given day.
And we're going to talk about that game in a little bit, but sure. It's just,
Final thing I'll say, guys, is this. Again, it was not a fluke. Vandy beat down Bama yesterday. Like Dave said, they were the better team yesterday. Guys, I'll be that guy. Welcome to life post Nick Saban. This ain't Nick Saban's Bama anymore, man. Bama is just not that invincible. They're no longer immortal. That's what it feels like to me. Bama can go lose a game like this, and that is not – and to your point, what Malachi Moore was doing in the game. I mean, if you're a Bama fan, you got to be like vomiting watching that. This is, I don't want to sound like an old head, like this ain't my Crimson Tide, but like that was. True, I saw Bama accounts that were like, "Yo, this is a problem. Like
it's
this
disgusting.
is not okay."
Yeah.
So,
dude, under Nick, and again, to your point, Chris, you don't want to sound like an old head.
It never happened under Bear,
Had 2 number 2s on special teams under him, and if you did, there'd been a major ass ripping to the special teams coordinator. I promise you, we wouldn't have to be bringing in the digits on the sideline to be doing that.
Before we get on out of here, what I will say is there are 2 truths to the situation. So the first one is, and I saw someone tweet this out last night, this is nowhere near Alabama 2007 when Nick Saban lost to Louisiana Monroe. It's an insult to Nick Saban's aura because if he lost to Louisiana Monroe. They are 100% right because of what Nick Saban inherited when he came in 2007. Every team that you have seen play against Alabama this year would beat the living dog breaks out of that 2017. It's fair.
I saw that team up, but they would not have beat Alabama. Would beat Wisconsin. I promise you. In 07.
But they would have lost to Georgia. They would have lost this Vanderbilt squad. They would have lost that. The other part is, and this is the part that sometimes is a little infuriating when I see some people come up with these kind of comments. Don't downplay what Vanderbilt did yesterday. Do not downplay what Vanderbilt, because if this is not your mom and pop's Vanderbilt squad, this is not the Vanderbilt of old that would be just basically the doormat of the SEC and the laughingstock of college football. It's not. They have a culture. They have an identity. They decided to go out of their way to bring in the right personnel in the offseason. They made some really good moves. They brought in some really good recruits. They're not an elite team by any standard, but they're not the Vanderbilt that used to just be that punchline. Oh, we're going to just tune up against them and get our backups in the second half. They're not. So yes, it is 100% inexcusable if you are Kalen DeBoer, because this would not happen in the Nick Saban 2007 led team. But my God, put some damn respect on Vanderbilt's name. They earned that win. They earned the right to celebrate. And more importantly, they earned the right to be able to say, we belong in the conversations where if you don't give us your best punch, you're walking away with an L, and we'll continue to we'll flood the field at First Bank Stadium.
Cole's
Clark Lee will earn his paycheck this week. Now he's got a totally different challenge.
Yeah.
To kind of, hey, boys, can I come get y'all off Broadway real fast?
Yeah.
We got a game against Kentucky this week.
The boys are going to be on Broadway all week. You got to try to get them off the mat from that sense.
And by the way, for somebody that loves defensive football, holy crap, am I excited for Kentucky versus Vanderbilt. Holy crap, am I excited for that game.
I was going to say, Cole, is it too late to order the Pavia jerseys? I feel like we need to get on that now.
I ordered a shirt for my birthday. That's my birthday gift to myself. I ordered a Pavia shirt.
I love that. Guys, let's move to the game that took place in College Station, the only ranked-on-ranked matchup in college football this past weekend, which, again, just speaks to the madness, and Cole warned us all. There was one ranked-on-ranked matchup, and it was the least dramatic of all these games.
Hey, it was just semantics, man.
It was, yeah. It was.
You're going to not bring a kid's coach. You're not going to bring his sister to practice. The kid doesn't even play. Eli Drinkwitz.
Yeah. Hey, I got one letter for you guys to describe this game. The letter of the day is F. It stands for frauds, which is what Missouri is.
Is it MIDZOU?
Hey, Mizzou is a fraud. I got nothing. I got nothing against Missouri, but you earned that title. You earned the title with that performance. That fraudulent.
So Chris, you're officially pulling the title. It's MIDZOU.
MIDZOU. I mean, it's right now. It's MIDZOU. Brady Cook is very MIDZOU.
Brady Cook definitely is.
I mean, guys, let's give the credit to A&M. Hey, give the credit to Mike Elko having the stones to say, you know what? Eli Drinkwitz thinks I'm playing this guy.
That's a chess, not checkers move.
There's people that think I should stick with Marcel Reed. He's been winning games, but he's not doing – we know we can't beat big-time opponents throwing for 160 yards and not having balance, and Connor Wigman gives us more balance and a better opportunity to go out. We can win games with Marcel Reed, but we can't win the games we need to win to make Aggie fans happy. A game like this, you make the move with Connor Wigman, and boys, I mean, it paid off as well as it possibly could. 18 of 22, 276. He gave that offense real, true balance. It opened up the run game immensely, 236 on the ground. Le'Veon Moss with 3 scores.
It was never close.
This was a thorough ass kicking from the start. Start to finish. So, guys, biggest takeaways. I mean, you could tell early, too, with Mizzou, when they had that long one to Luther Burden and it got called back, you're like, man, this is just not – this ain't your day, man. You're not playing well, and you got stuff like that going against you, making those mistakes. Guys, is it too aggressive to say that A&M is a college football playoff contender? I'm not saying they're going. I'm not saying they're going. But I had somebody clap back like, no way, man. They're going to be like 9-3. I'm like, you realize 9-3 is like on the cusp of getting in.
First year.
Right. It would absolutely be a great first year with Elko. But more so just like with the way the schedule lines up. And if, I'm just saying it's possible.
The LSU home game in 3 weeks is the big – if they win that – you can start having the conversation of them being in that.
But you know what? Take the playoff out of it. I don't want to every game have to
that's the problem.
Every game hey, let's talk. This game in a vacuum, Texas A&M, this was the early – there could be another one. I'm sure Aggie fans hope so. This was the early signature win of year one of Mike Elko. I mean, this type of performance, I don't care what you think about Missouri. You think they're fraudulent. They were the most overrated top – whatever. They were 9th in the country, and you just beat them by 31 at Kyle Field. So, hell of a job.
It's tip of the cap to Elko. I mean, again, if you go out there and make that move and Connor Wigman comes out there and looks like he did against Notre Dame, people are going to be like, dude, you pulled a quarterback who was 3-0 and had not had a turnover. What are we doing?
That took stones. That
was a big picture decision. I don't think that was just a Missouri game decision. And granted, he made Eli Drinkwitz look like a total fool during the week. But the thing with Elko is, it's what you said, Chris. We talked about it all week, head into it. for A&M to go to the college football playoff, they have to have Connor Wigman. Again, it's very similar to what Dabo did in 2018 with Trevor Lawrence when they had Kelly Bryant. Kelly Bryant got him through the first half of that season because of his experience. But Dabo knew he had to make that change because at some point for them to go ultimately win the national title, which they did, they had to have that upside at the quarterback position. Again, not saying A&M's going to win a national title, just similar comparisons there. You're right. I mean, it wasn't even close from the get-go. I mean, on the run and on the ground game, I think Corey Batoon got welcomed into the SEC. Defense looked a little soft. I mean, our guy Will Blanket Lee, I mean, he sends the blanket and he lives up to his talk, dude. I mean, yeah. I mean, A&M, that was one of their more complete performances in the really probably since the 2020 season, if we're being – you say 21 when they beat Alabama, but still, I mean, they dominated across the board. There's really not like a ton to really – I mean, what advantage did Missouri really have? Not advantage. I mean, where did they win in this game? I don't think they did. You're right. To the point, Brady Cook. I see Missouri fans – asking, do they make a change? I mean, I don't know if you go to Drew Pine, who's been riding.
No, that's crazy.
We're gonna stop there for a minute, Dave. No, continue, Dave. But I'm just saying, like, with
no,
Brady,
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't think Brady Cook's been good all year. Right? I agree with Missouri fans from that perspective, 100%. He has left a lot of meat on the bone. I mean, what was he yesterday? He was really bad yesterday.
Under 50
for 31.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to get it done.
He's missing some of those throws that you have to hit. Like, especially
and I thought they abandoned the outside zone run early. I like Noel and Carroll. I don't know why they got away from it early. It's almost like Eli outthought himself all week, and it was almost, again, maybe this isn't the case, but it was almost like with Connor Wigman started, it was kind of a shell shock to Missouri. It's almost like they sat there like, we didn't prepare for this guy all week.
They didn't.
They did.
They made it clear that they didn't.
Which is a coach. That's on drink.
That's crazy. On drink. Yeah, it's crazy to show your hand that way. It really is.
And you know what's funny is that you could have just simply said, guys, we prepared for the wrong QB. Let's try and make it work at halftime. And it just feels like, would anybody respect you at that point? Would anybody believe in you at that point? And again, I'm not going to sit here and act like Texas A&M has not earned back-to-back wins in the Southwest Classic and against Missouri. And yes, you can say Missouri is fraudulent. I'm going to call them mid-Z because they're sleeping behind the wheel right now. They're not finding any life whatsoever. But I think that when you look at also Texas A&M, the reason why they look so good is for two main things. The first one is the stench of the Jimbo Fisher era is completely gone, and the anchor that was Mike Elko is back in the building. And I think that everyone who is an Aggie wakes up this morning and is okay paying that $76 million buyout to get back the guy who was the one caveat and the one saving grace of always promise and consistency. That I think is number one. The other thing is also they did make the best hire of the offseason. And I brought this up on the postgame show. Chris hasn't, Dave, I agree with you that Tim Beck was a great hire. The best hire was Tommy Moffitt, because Tommy Moffitt, as the strength and conditioning coach, for my money, has built up a team.
Well, we're comparing two different. That's off the. I'm talking about the 11 coaches.
But still, the fact that you have a guy that has won 3 national titles, building lines and building stellar overall physicality at LSU, comes on in with very similar personnel, very similar players from last season, and it looks like a night and day difference. To me, that's what's going to start to carry you. I also agree. Yes, Connor Wigman, the difference, and you saw it yesterday, is a guy like Marcel Reed can get you to 8-4. A guy like Connor Wigman can get you to the college football playoff. And it was very transparent. And the offense now, I think, is humming in the right direction because of what you see with him. It also was just a bad game plan by Missouri. Now, again, here's where I have to come in and play devil's advocate when you guys say that, the dark horse conversation, the college football playoff conversation. We've seen this with A&M for years. For years, we have seen this. They wake up and they play the big game. They'll wake up and they'll play number 1 Alabama, and they'll take it down to the wire. They'll play Georgia. They'll beat LSU in what is for them a shot to go to the college football playoff. And then they lose to Mississippi State. That has been the MO. And maybe it won't be Mississippi State this year. I don't think anybody could lose to
I don't
that.
think it's
Hey,
Mississippi
could be Cole. You mentioned it many times. Could be South Carolina.
I
mentioned
think
it. You mentioned it, Cole.
That's the game, and then at Auburn the week before Texas.
You
And
mentioned it, Cole. These are the games you don't worry about A&M in these games. It's those other games. That
That's been the point all offseason. And when someone said no, they'll finish 9-3, they're saying that because they've watched it. They've seen what this team looks like. And I've tried to explain to Aggies, I've tried to explain this to everyone, that even though A&M looked great yesterday, these are not the games that I worry about. I think Dave and I both said, what did we say, Dave? Like it was going to be a one-possession game at the end of the day. It was either going to be a blowout or it was going to be down to the wire for Mizzou.
Well, when we did our preview, we didn't factor in us two and Eli Drinkowitz were unprepared this week and expecting Wigman to play.
Exactly. But at the same time, we figured that this was going to be one of two ways. It wasn't, but at the same time, this to me with the team like Texas A&M knew they were going to wake up and choose violence this game. How do they look when they play against an Auburn team that has already been knocked out of bowl eligibility? How do they play when they travel to Williams-Brice Stadium to take on a South Carolina team that feels like it has nothing to lose? Because those are the games where they'll look amazing against Texas. They'll look amazing against LSU. Yeah. They'll look amazing yesterday, and they'll drop one of those. But here's what I will say. That might have been a Jimbo thing. And now we have to look at it in a new light because if it's a Mike Elko thing. And if you know anything, and I've talked to some people behind closed doors about how they've looked in practice, there is a brand new feel in Aggieland. And finally, the way that people have talked about Texas A&M, what it can be as a program, you might get there. This might be it. And you know what's really funny? You had the guy that was always going to lead you in the pathway. He just had to leave for a couple years to get that head coaching experience out of the way. And also, you look at their schedule, it does bode well in their favor, and the Notre Dame loss does not look so daunting anymore. All of that aside, it feels like that they are trending at least in a better direction. And I'm going to say something that's really controversial, and Dave probably knows this too. There's a scenario where Jimbo Fisher allows Mizzou to come back in that game. There's a scenario where that game is a lot closer for comfort because of who is calling the shots.
Two programs, certainly it feels like trending in opposite directions right now, at least with what A&M did. Missouri struggling last couple of weeks, losing that way. A lot of tough questions and coming.
Now, I mean, chalk that one up. Another one, guys. That was no fluke either.
It wasn't.
No,
you know what was really interesting? It felt like yesterday we did see number 9 play number 25. But the numbers
were reversed.
But the numbers were reversed.
Yeah.
Missouri was a little, again, I think two things can be true. I think Missouri still is a solid football team, but I think they were overrated. People, again, I think they were about what I thought. I think they're going to be 8-4, 9-3 kind of team at the end of the year. Maybe 4 is a stretch because of the schedule. I mean, again, though, it's the craziest season we've seen, man. We are sitting here like, I think every week, I'm as guilty of it as anybody. Like every week we sit here and it's like, even myself, I literally just did it by saying, oh, yeah, A&M ain't going to lose to Mississippi State this year. I don't think they will. But hell, I wouldn't have predicted Vanderbilt to beat Alabama either. Nobody did.
Nobody did, but there's a giant difference between those squads right now.
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, for sure. Vanderbilt would beat Mississippi State.
State ain't got no Diego Pavia, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for damn sure. Also, real fast for my Mizzou faithful that tune in because of my bandwagon love for this team, it's not over. It's not. It's one loss. You still have a shot. By the way, that Alabama game now looks really, really, really promising. I'm not saying it does.
Missouri fans in Missouri. I'm not saying this. I'm a religious guy, but skip church today and go listen to Preacher Thompson's sermon here. He's going to get you up today. It's a glass
Here's
half.
What we're going to do.
We're doing this, guys. We got a shot.
You do. Why? Why?
We got to change it.
Why do I believe? Well, here's why I believe. Because we also have to say Brady Cook has not looked good. Brady Cook has not looked good at all. He also hasn't had a lot of help. In the offensive line, the play calling, missed balls, inconstructive routes, the penalties beyond belief. There's so much that went wrong in that game. I can't put all the pressure on Brady Cook. Now, here's the good news. You get one. You had one against Vanderbilt, and I told you that was the one that you couldn't afford to lose. Well, now you just can't afford to lose because you got to get in the college football playoff. And it does feel like for a team for Mizzou, with their schedule, guys, they're going to have to start winning with finesse. Because of the other part that's really important for teams like Mizzou it doesn't matter if they win. It matters how are the teams that they lost to looked in as well. So if they lose to, say, Texas A&M, and Texas A&M finds a way to immediately come back down to reality and they go like 6-6, it doesn't look good anymore. If they find a way to see a team such as South Carolina and they lose South Carolina, but they beat Alabama, yeah, that win against Alabama, they feel really good about themselves. But if South Carolina's losing to Vanderbilt, that's not good either. So you're putting yourself in a situation where not only do you have to win games convincingly, but you also have to hope that the teams that you lose to are also holding their end of the bargain. Because Texas A&M at 10-2, their schedule is good enough to put them in the college football playoff. I don't know if you can say the same thing about Missouri if both losses come to Texas A&M and then it comes to, of course, Alabama. That's stretching the field.
I don't know how Missouri gets on the flight to go to Amherst next week.
The most random road trip that any SEC
I feel
team will take.
The Minutemen have one. Here's what I will say, and I'm going to make the dad joke now. The Minutemen have 1 minute to capitalize against Mizzou because that is going to be a game. I'm sorry. That's going to be a game that gets out of hand really fast. I think that you're going to watch Kirby Moore get into his bag in this game.
Guys, we got a couple more to knock out. Let's do so really quickly. Ole Miss beat South Carolina 27-3 in Columbia. It was the bounce back the Rebels needed. I was sort of surprised that South Carolina, I don't want to say they were a no-show because that takes away from what Ole Miss did, but guys, South Carolina has problems offensively. You can blame it on the offensive coordinator. You can blame it on a young quarterback. Guys, the offensive line is still not very good. They don't have weapons on the. I think they gave up 5 sacks in that game. By the way,
Ashford's banged up. You can tell.
Yeah, they give up 5 sacks in that game. They don't have big time weapons on the outside. Guys, my takeaway is this too, and I know there's stuff to take away from the Ole Miss side, but the South Carolina side, and they've got the pass rush. They've got the guys in the front 7 that are going to give them a shot every week. That offense, though, if they're not getting help, it's not a good offense, guys. I like the LSU game. They got a little help, and they did some things offensively. Don't get me wrong. But there were things in that game. South Carolina was opportunistic defensively. They were opportunistic in special teams. They need those kind of things to generate points. We saw it against Kentucky too. If you're going to just line up and say, hey, good on good, best on best, we're not going to give you anything. You got to line up and your 11's got to beat us. I don't trust South Carolina's 11 on the offensive side right now to go out and just flat out beat many people. Again, other side, Ole Miss gets the big bounce back up. Guys, what'd you take away from the game?
I mean, again, to my point originally, I said Ashford, so I meant Lenore Sellers. He didn't look healthy. You could tell 100%. To your point, Chris, a little bit, I'll be honest with you, a little bit. Bless my wife. She drove back from Athens so I could watch the afternoon slate. For whatever reason, the SEC is just overloading the afternoon slate now with the change of CBS. But my point, it felt like there was really no flow to this game. Like I was always a TV timeout because Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss tap out on defense every play to stop the clock. I mean, I give Shane Beamer credit. He was about as humble as you could be about it in the lot. And he's like, I hope all those kids are okay. But I agree with it. At some point, if you go down, you got to be out for the series. But I think specifically this game, it's like we've kind of said. I mean, South Carolina is what they are on offense. There's really no
Dave,
play.
really quickly, not to cut you off, the thing we need to note, the tone was set on the first drive when you had the inexplicable fake punt. That was
that was the game. No, that was the game.
Again, that was Shane Beamer out thinking himself.
If you're going to go for it,
go for it.
Leave the offense out there.
Especially for 1 yard. Shane probably coached his worst game of the season yesterday. That was a bad, granted, it's in 5-6 games. That was his worst performance. I'll be honest with you, too. I wasn't overly impressed with Ole Miss. Like, it was kind of just, Ole Miss had opportunities.
Offensively, I agree.
Yeah,
I will agree offensively.
They had chances to go kind of put the nail in the coffin real early, and it never really felt like they were challenged. I thought this was the lock of the day in the league, honestly. Ole Miss bouncing back to beat South Carolina because, to what Cole's bringing up, I didn't see how South Carolina could generate enough offense. We talked about it off the air, Chris. You and I did. Dow Loggins does not want Lenore Sellers as a quarterback. Internally, that is known. That is not what he wants. He wants a passer in the pocket like Spencer Rattler who can go stretch the field. He's not comfortable calling a game where the kid's strength right now is on the edge and likes to run between the tackles. He's banged up too. It just kind of seems like they're forcing a square peg into a round hole. They have no offensive identity. I think that's probably going to continue because you look outside. Let's say you do want to start stretching the field. And again, Lenore Sellers is an inconsistent passer right now at his age. But who on the outside stepping up for you? I mean, there's really not a lot of guys going to go win their true one-on-one battles. Defensively, I mean, they're fine. They're going to keep them in some games. But, yeah, South Carolina, I think that team, they're when they play good teams, other good teams who are pretty good on offense, I think they're going to have a hard time keeping up from that perspective. Yeah, real quick on Ole Miss before Cole goes. Yeah, I mean, I thought you get a win. I mean, it kind of seemed like a real just lackadaisical. They kind of just rolled into town, faked some injuries. Lane even looked real unemotional after the game. I mean, Lane's walking off the field like this. It was kind of a weird game. Defensively, though, I mean, Ole Miss, one of the best, probably their best defense since 15, I'd say. It's been a long
I'd say before 2014, maybe even. I mean, you go back to that, whatever was the year that they played Alabama with Hugh Freeze in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, 14, 15 was with the years with Hugh Freeze. And before that, it's probably Houston Nuts first year 08. I mean, Greg Hardy, Parade Jerry. But, Ole Miss's defense, that's the biggest improvement. Something's wrong with Jackson Dart, dude. He looks banged up. He doesn't even look. Now, granted, he took 2 shots with a shotgun from Dylan Stewart. So impressive. He went
Did you see his post after? He was like, I forget he quoted. It was from.
He said that you missed.
He said take 1,000 shots and somehow miss or something like that. That was savage. That was savage.
Yeah, but I mean, something's up with him from an injury standpoint. He doesn't look the same as is. Ole Miss banged up though across the board. Had to get it. Got to go get another one, guys. And I bring up the stat. Only 2 teams since 2019 have won both back-to-back true road games. Not a bye week sandwiched in like Tennessee had between Oklahoma, bye, Arkansas. Back-to-back true back-to-back weeks. 2019 LSU won the national championship. 2021 Georgia won the national championship. Bama had it in 2020, but not a full stadium. So for stats sake, I'm keeping that. Ole Miss was at South Carolina yesterday. Goes and faces an LSU's team who's on a bye week this week. Nobody can feel any better right now than Blake Baker after watching that Missouri defense yesterday. He's probably like, man, they really miss me over there in Columbia, right?
What I will say is that it could have been worse. I went back and I watched that game as much as possible. It could have been so much worse with Ole Miss, especially offensively, because you lose Trey Harris, but you do see as Caden Lee steps up. You do see as Juice Walls has a couple of big time plays. There were some inaccurate throws. Let's just call it like it is. There were some plays that you could easily want back if you're Jackson Dart. But there were also so many dumb self-inflicting wounds by Ole Miss's offense. I mean, Juice Wells at the 2-yard line, fumbling it into the back of the end zone for a touchback, and Lane Kiffin's losing his mind as well he should. We're kind of at that weird point when it comes to Ole Miss, where Kentucky might be better than we're even expecting, and that one game against South Carolina is simply just Mark Stoops' kryptonite. It's going to be moving forward. You just got to chalk that one up as an L. But Kentucky still can be one of the best teams in the SEC. And they looked like it against the likes of a team like Ole Miss. And Ole Miss, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot and they play consistent football and they target more than just Trey Harris the way they had to in the second half because if he was dealing with an ankle injury, they're still one of the best teams in college football. That's where we are with Ole Miss at this point. It was a B- overall performance, and they still won by double digits. And honestly, they probably should have won by 40. I mean, if you just take out a couple of errant passes, you take out a couple of miscommunications, a couple of bad penalties, it really wasn't as bad as it looks on paper. Does Jackson Dart have to play better against a team like LSU if he wants to walk away with a win? Absolutely.
And I don't even think he's healthy, to be fair to the kid.
Yeah. Can the team at this point not afford to lose anybody else to injury? Absolutely. But their defense looked really good for the second straight week, especially against the ground game. They made quarterbacks have to throw the football. A guy like Brock Vandegrift is improving where a guy like Lenore Sellers is as advertised. And ultimately, that played a major factor in the game. That played a major factor in setting the tempo, getting a lot of 3 and outs. For me, though, when it comes to South Carolina, they still are going to be that wild card. And I have talked about it all offseason. I've told you guys this, and I've told everyone on the audience this. You tell me that they beat Vanderbilt, who beat number 1 Alabama by 20 points. I will believe it. You tell me that they march on into Norman in 2 weeks and they take down Oklahoma. I will believe it. You tell me that they beat A&M at home. I will believe it. You tell me that they get curb stopped by Vandy. I also will believe it, because if there's just so much unknown with this team, and now we have seen all 3 levels of what the roster is. For starters, they're a good team against a program like Kentucky on the road. They're a solid team against LSU, who just had a couple of bad breaks and penalties, and then they looked horrendous against Ole Miss. So we have seen every version of South Carolina. They've seen every version of South Carolina at this point. Ole Miss dominated that game. They just shot themselves in the foot with countless penalties, and it didn't look like it on paper. But honestly, for me, when it came down to it, and Michael Williams, see in the comment, Ole Miss didn't win the game, I guess. No, Ole Miss won the game. I just told you they should have won by 40. They easily should have won by 40. But the tone was set when you went for the fake punt that nobody fell for. I mean, that to me, that was when immediately I'm like, yeah, no, this game's over. Like, even as somebody who thought, oh, well, maybe this thing could be close, because I was different than you guys. I thought this game was going to come down to the wire and a Juice Wells touchdown. Like, that's what it was going to be.
I mean, I had South Carolina plus 9.5. So, I mean, I really, which was a stupid
This is my
bet.
most confident pick of the day. I thought Ole Miss was
I had South Carolina plus 9.5. When I saw that fake punt, I was like, nope, this game's over.
That like you said, that set the tone. To your point, Cole, when you do every week, you put these teams in different categories, contenders, pretenders, but it goes beyond that. Volatile is the category I'd put South Carolina and some other SEC teams. But to your point, South Carolina is just a volatile team in 2024. You don't know what you're going to get. Really, truly.
I feel like you know what you're going to get with them. I'll say this. We say they're unknown, but I feel pretty confident. I know what I'm getting with them offensively every week.
Well, I'll tell you this. South Carolina, again, they got to get help. They're a team that when they play.
They have this. Two things to be true at once. I think South Carolina is a pretty average team across the board. I think the league being so vulnerable as it is this year, you could meet that sliding scale in the middle, which, to Cole's point, makes South Carolina a team that could beat anybody on a given day. Because I think the league's again, this is a long conversation for another day, but I think the league's a little bit down in the middle and back's a little bit better than it's been. But I think just because of that, South Carolina has a chance going into every game. I think them is just, you're looking at them solely. They're a pretty average team. Yeah. Like, I don't see I know what they are offensively.
They're kind of what I expected this year. They're a little bit better defensively.
They're not good. Probably a win or two better than I thought they would be.
But Ole Miss's defense definitely can't take anything away. They were
correct.
The problem is with South Carolina, and I think that it's very clear as day. You can either have Lenore Sellers or you can have Dowell Loggins, but one of them can't be here next year if you want this to work.
Correct.
And I will say, have you looked at what South Carolina has done the last few days when it comes to recruiting? Who they've landed? A couple of big 4-star wide receivers. They're landing the dudes. But at some point, it's much like we said with Jimbo Fisher. It's great that you were able to go ahead and land some dudes. It's great that you were able to go ahead and land some premier talent. If you can't develop them, you're wasting their time and you're wasting yours. But for Ole Miss, I think that it was very clear that sometimes playing that cupcake, wishy-washy preseason of a schedule comes back to bite you in the ass. I don't think that they're going to get bit in the ass again this year. I don't. I don't feel that way against Georgia. I don't feel that way against LSU. They had a B- performance, and they still could have won by nearly 40. Like
y'all tell me if I'm wrong on this one before we move on real fast. 3 games that I think the team that lost the game originally would salivate to get another opportunity. And I think the team that won it the first time would not want any piece of it again. It's definitely Kentucky would take South Carolina in the parking lot. South Carolina would want no part of that again. I think Georgia would go challenge Bama again. Bama right now would want no part of that. And I think Ole Miss, Kentucky right now would be the same thing. I think those are the 3 games.
I got one more for you. LSU versus USC. Because you don't have a performance like that against Minnesota. Yeah. And you were, I'm sorry.
Brian Kelly doesn't keep the training wheels on Garrett Nussmeier that night.
I'm sorry. You do not lose that USC team 6 times. You lose one time.
Yeah. I think that's fair, Cole. Yeah, I would agree with that.
To the point both you guys said before we move off this one, mentioning Dowell Loggins. Cole, you said Dowell Loggins, Lenore Sellers, one of them has to not be in town next year. Dave, you said that Dowell Loggins doesn't want Lenore Sellers as his starting quarterback. The fan base doesn't want Dowell Loggins. So I can just tell you, go read some of the comments. They are, and I don't disagree with him. The guy was labeled the worst play caller in the NFL at one point for a reason. He's not a good play caller. I don't know what you need to see. By the way, guys, just to encapsulate the 2024 season, the South Carolina Gamecocks will travel to Tuscaloosa to face the Alabama Crimson Tide, looking to bounce back after a loss to Vandy. That alone encapsulates how stupid this season is.
It's in basketball, folks.
And this ain't basketball.
In baseball?
Yeah. And it's not baseball. Yeah, that sounds more like a baseball storyline. Cole, are you good to keep going, or you got to jump out of here?
Yeah, I can go for about another 10 minutes because I got to go.
Let's knock out these 2 quickly.
Then. You guys realize that I cover the NFL, and
yes,
that's why I'm dressed
up. Trying to be mindful. You look great, Cole. You look great. Really quickly, Georgia Auburn. I'll be honest with you. I watched some of this game at the tailgate, but didn't see a ton. hey, Auburn plus 22.5 hit. Tigers hung in there. Defense coming in. Dave, what did you see, though? I want to get your take. Again, you were there in person. I only saw bits and pieces here and there, and I can look at a stat sheet. But what did you see in person in this game, Georgia getting the 18-point win over the Tigers?
I think it was pretty similar to how most people I saw nationally thought it would go. I think a lot of people thought it was a lot of points to give an Auburn team, especially a Georgia team that just doesn't produce a lot of points in the first half. Outside the very end of the first half, I mean, they were staring at 7-3. I mean, I poor guy, I don't know his name, sitting next to me, but Bubba, the big Georgia fan sitting next to me to my left, dude, he wouldn't have pissed on Mike Bobo if he was on fire in that moment in the first half for a little bit. You can spot it. It's almost back from 2008 to 2015-16 before Bobo went and got the Colorado State job level. They're on his ass a little bit. But no, I mean, again, Hugh kind of goes out there. I saw a post game. He threw Peyton Thorne. But to be fair, that was a Peyton Thorne blame. It was kind of like, what the hell happened on that fourth down, dude? I mean, you totally just call an audible. I thought Georgia, again, defensively is going to be fine. There's going to be some holes. Again, Hugh Freeze knows that defense between playing Nick Saban, Kirby Smart. Kirby then tweaked it a little bit. He knows the holes, so they made some shot plays. Interesting game. I mean, it kind of just went the way I was. There's not like a massive takeaway. I will say Kirby came out and called the fans. It was a little weird, though. It was almost like people just showed up because they had to, kind of felt with no energy. There was really Chris, you were in Tuscaloosa last week. It kind of felt like looking at videos. You tell me you were there. Like the game day production was unbelievable. Georgia, I couldn't say that yesterday. It was a real low-key energy. People were on edge about the offense. I mean, it really – Auburn didn't play bad, I don't think. Georgia's just a better football team. I mean, the total yards, 381 to 380 to 337. I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot of difference between Georgia's a better football team. I mean, let's be honest. After the shakeup of yesterday in the SEC, Georgia really ho-hummed themselves to one of the better wins in the league, I guess, yesterday. And it wasn't sexy. It's just – Auburn is what it is. They make key mistakes. They weren't his penalty. They weren't his turnover. They didn't turn the ball over yesterday, so that's a win in itself. But I was talking to some Auburn people on the sideline before the game. They were even saying Hugh was in their staff meeting that morning, just like looking at their offensive staff, being like, how did we not take a transfer quarterback? And they're all sitting there like, Coach, we're in the middle. We're about to go play in Athens. Why are we talking about this anymore? So he just keeps bringing it up, even in their own staff meetings, day of games, about why they didn't bring a quarterback. So I guess hindsight is very clear. He got that LASIK surgery. It's 2020 for Hugh. He knows that. But no, overall energy a little low. Georgia got the W. Auburn a little bit better on offense because not the turnovers. But again, I think we all kind of expected that.
But to your point, Dave, with the way yesterday went and the way this season's gone, hey, beating your rival by 18, not a bad day.
Never in doubt, really, but they struggled a little bit at times on offense. Georgia.
Can we just say what everyone else is thinking? Like, it's a rivalry game. You don't get right in a rivalry game. It doesn't matter who you're playing against and what the team looks like. You don't get right in that matchup. You never were out of jeopardy of losing that game, but you never really felt like you were putting your foot on the gas. And it's because of it's a rivalry game. Remember last year what we saw when these two went against each other in Jordan Hare and it went all the way down to the wire? Like, it just happens. It's the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Things are just sometimes in favor of the opponent when they're traveling on the road. But I do got to give a little bit of credit to when it comes to Hugh Freeze. He's not entirely wrong. It's not a bad football team if you limit the turnovers. You had no turnovers. Guess what? Went down and only lost by 18. You probably have a shot of maybe being a winner against Arkansas. You certainly beat Cal if you don't have the turnovers. It literally comes down to that. So there's a lot to like. There's a lot to be upset about. Diego Pavia probably wins that football game. Diego Pavia probably wins every single football game. Diego Pavia probably right now is sitting at 6-0 down on the Plains. And life is happy hunky-dory for Hugh Freeze. But at the same time, they did land the quarterback for the future in Deuce Knight. They're going to spend money in the offseason still, I think, setting this tone for what will be the market for quarterback transfers. It is what it is. But I have to go, unfortunately. I do have to run. This is my swan song. Thank you all for joining us today. I know that the Florida game is going to be really interesting. There's my thoughts on that real fast. Florida got a win they needed. Now it's going to be really interesting to see how they respond against a Tennessee team that needs to get back in its momentum. But congratulations to Diego Pavia for winning the college football Iron Bowl because he truly can be the only person that says
he rolls into Auburn later in the year trying to be 3-0 against the state of Alabama in the last 2 years.
Oh, Bobby Yaga's going to do it. Bobby Yaga's good.
I would lean he does right now. I'm with you, Cole.
Bobby Yaga 100% does it. Bye, guys. I'll see you next week.
Cole, love you,
Go
brother.
get them, Texans.
Appreciate you. Go get them, Texans, indeed. Yeah, I think, Dave, the really encouraging thing, too, looking at the numbers, 0 turnovers for Auburn. A lot of their folks felt really good after this game, I saw on social media. Like, I think a lot of them with the young players, they were like, hey, we're laying a good foundation here. Went toe-to-toe with the Dogs in Athens. And I think, like, from what I saw from Auburn people, they felt really encouraged leaving this game.
No, I would agree. Again, I mean, let's just say Auburn was undefeated or 4-1 rolling into that, they're probably like, after yesterday, probably like, okay, like we know Georgia.
This is one you expected to lose.
We had a chance in the second half to kind of make this a game, put ourselves in the best position to win. We didn't, but Georgia's the better team. We were playing at Sanford, a place we hadn't won since 2005. So like, I think they would have accepted that. I think they are accepting it today. Like, oh yeah, that could have been worse. But it's like you said, it still doesn't. It would have felt better if you weren't. I mean, CP, me and you were at this game. It'd have been interesting to see if they just started Peyton Thorne that whole game against Arkansas and didn't have a Hank Brown whole half, how that game would have ended up shaking out.
Well, yeah, you are correct, but at that time, that felt like the best move. And then
hindsight's very clear in 2020.
Yeah, hindsight's very clear. But I mean, I think if you're Auburn again, Dave, you got to build off the fact you played clean football for the most part and didn't turn it over and say, hey, guys, can we, build momentum on that front and keep this going?
They got a bye week and then at Mizzou.
Yeah. So, like, if you cannot shoot yourself in the foot, you have shown you're not a terrible football. You're better than a 2-4 football team. I'm not trying to.
Your point, Chris. When you turn on the game, you're not sitting there being like, "Good gracious!" Like this is a bad football team. You're right. Yeah. It's just they just have such back-breaking mistakes, and when I say mistakes, penalties and turnovers, as you would attest to as well. Like that's where you're a little bit like what me and you were saying earlier, dude. I mean, you can play as well all you want, make some big-time plays down the stretch, but dude, you start turning the ball over 2+ times in a game, that evens the playing field against somebody that may not be executing as well. But you know what? Like you said, they're not shooting themselves in the foot, so they're going to have that opportunity at the end to go win the game.
And then for Georgia, Dave, you mentioned it. Like I said, you were there in person. Really surprised to hear about I wonder if the atmosphere suffered because, people didn't take Auburn all that seriously or whatever. Surprised to hear that. But Georgia, very ho-hum. You just wonder, are they going to cut it on at some point? Like or maybe this is just – maybe this is, Dave, this is just college football this year where, to your point, there just isn't that dominant team that's running away with this thing, and it's just going to be a big mess.
Someone brought it up in the comments earlier, CPS. Someone asked, why do you think it's the parity in college? It's definitely the portal. I mean, think about it. Cole's got to be the portal. Diego Pavia isn't even at Vanderbilt if we don't have the portal. So the portal is definitely made more parity in college football, even to like the teams who normally wouldn't be as good, like Vanderbilt. But also you got to think too, it's killed the depth of the Georgias of the world, especially on the offensive line, on the back end in the secondary. Teams are forced to play more freshmen. I mean, look at Alabama. I say it all the time. 6 scholarship corners. 3 of them are true freshmen. Jalen Mbakwe played quarterback in high school last year.
Yeah. Dave, let's get to Gainesville as we wrap this up. Game that kind of went under the radar a little bit just because of all the other action going on. But Florida gets a much-needed victory for Billy Napier. I think it's ironic, Dave, that it's you and I talking about this game, seeing as you and I both picked UCF to win this game. So credit to the Gators. Again, getting a win you had to have. Graham Mertz was really good in this one, efficient, 19 of 23, threw for 179, a touchdown. DJ Lagway, 4 of 4 for 50 yards. This is Graham Mertz's team. We know that. You want to continue to play Lagway, but it's Mertz's team. Dave, thoughts on the Gators? Again, getting one. They just simply put, the biggest takeaway, you had to have it. Now you got it, and now what is next for Billy?
Yeah, I was real interested to see how Florida come out and see how interested they overall were in this game, and they seem interested in it. Again, I'd probably outside of obviously Sam Pittman and Clark Lee, I mean, I'd probably say sitting there at third, biggest winner of the day may be Billy Napier, if you want to be completely honest. And again, I'm not going to probably pick them next week in Knoxville, but they probably feel a little better, especially if they go run that 3-high shell against the Tennessee offense. As Austin Armstrong, Ron Roberts take a page out of Arkansas's book. But, I mean, overall, though, you got to be impressed. You're right. That was a big game. It did look like it. It may have been the best bye week Billy's ever been a part of, by the way they played. Again, this game was never in doubt. I mean, UCF made a little push late, but you just never felt like UCF had the juice offensively to put them over. Give, like I just mentioned, Austin Armstrong, Ron Roberts credit. They had a good defensive game plan. I mean, KJ Jefferson went great, 12 for 22 and an interception. It just felt like UCF could never get anything going. Just very predictable play calling by Gus. And Florida came out and played with their hair on fire. Give them credit. I thought there'd be more. You know where I was wrong on this? Well, two things where I was wrong on this, CP. Is Florida's interest in this game. I was wrong, obviously. And I thought it'd be higher scoring.
I did too.
I thought both teams would get in the 30s here. And they obviously did. Final was 24-13. But, God, UCF, such a bad tackling team overall. I know they only gave up 24 points. But, no, I mean, you got Florida. Man, it's a game you hate to say it, but that's a pretty good win for them. UCF at home, they were an underdog. Man, maybe that rallies the troops and you feel a lot better. I mean, they got to feel a little bit better going into Knoxville than they did probably this week or last week going into it. But no, it's a good win. Had to have it for Billy Napier. It gives you that little confidence boost. I still think UCF, and really, I mean, I think you'd agree with me on this as well, Chris. The Big 12 just not very good. I mean, I don't even know who ends up winning that kind of Utah or Colorado right now.
It's absolutely a one-bid league. We know that. It's a one-bid league. But, yeah, Florida defensively, I think you got to be really encouraged, Dave, Wichita defensively, hold them to 2.7 yards per rush. I mean, like you mentioned, KJ was shut down for the most part. And you just, if you're Florida, man, to your point, people forget they were the underdog, and they win this game as the home underdog. Just having something to feel good about, man, if you're Florida. Again, who knows what happens the rest of the way out. But Billy Napier, for now, the job is safe. We're not having conversations about we're sitting here waiting on Scott Strickland and company to make a move. So what does it mean for the long term? Dave, probably nothing if we're being totally transparent, but it was just for this season. And I will say this, looking back, again, hindsight 2020, I do kind of wish I'd have went Florida because I will say from what I've heard down there, the one thing is like that team is bought in. That team really, really likes Billy Napier. They play hard for him. I do not think you're going to see Florida quit necessarily. Like I think they really, you know, they're behind Billy Napier. The guy's in that locker room. So
yeah, I mean, to your point, CP, I think there's one game every week, and the one that sticks out for the season is the Mississippi State Arizona State game a couple weeks ago. This one's very similar where I'm like, yeah, dude, I put too much on the emotional, like interest side on this game, and it was just like, nah. Florida obviously has the better team on paper as well. And they were motivated in there for me. If you told me Florida, hey, they came in motivated, it's like, well, yeah, Florida's going to win the game. I probably put too much stock into that one. So that was two things I was wrong in, just the interest Florida would have, and honestly, as good as defense they played. I thought UCF would go watch that A&M game and utilize the run game. Now Florida, again, I got to go back. This is one game I hadn't gone back and watched. I was back and forth between this one and the Tennessee game, but it just kind of felt like, I mean, it didn't feel like it was worse than the score was even indicating. It was like 24-3 at one point. It was like, yeah, you feel that close.
Yeah, the Florida folks I talked to, they feel like their biggest gripe was not finishing them off, I guess you could say, in the second half. That was the thing.
Yeah, and I never even felt like, yeah, you let them have a chance to cut it to a single possession with about 3 minutes left. But, I mean, that game was never really in doubt.
Yeah. Dave, as we close it up, man, week 6 again is in the books. I'll leave you with this. We asked this question last week after the Bama-Georgia game. Dave, I'll ask you again. I mean, again, we're going to do power rankings this week, and the polls are going to come out. I mean, is Texas not a big winner this week? They got to jump back to 1, right? I mean, I don't see how they don't.
Yeah.
After Bama falls, and I don't think you slide Georgia up that far. Tennessee falls. I mean,
they probably won't push Ohio State up till this week. They don't want to push Ohio State up to 1 and then they go lose in Eugene.
Right. Yeah, I think they need to play somebody with a pulse.
You're right. I mean, I think it's Texas. I would agree with you from that perspective.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, Texas is. Do they go to the Cotton Bowl in Red River in Dallas and kind of lay an egg like everybody else has in the league at some point? It's almost like it's your turn. Are you going to do it, guys? Here's your cake. Are you going to drop it? Like, I mean. I don't know. I mean, right now, as we speak on Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone, I feel good about Texas winning that game. But you're right. I mean, this is the craziest college football season. And again, I hate being like this because I feel like sometimes we just say that, like media people say that just to get hype. But I truly feel like that's real this year. Like it's overused. But I feel like yesterday was the biggest upset weekend probably in my life from an SEC perspective only. When you factor in Bama losing to Vanderbilt, and then Tennessee going on the road and losing to Arkansas, you're kind of like, man. And I think it goes back to there's just a lot more parity in college football with the portal and stuff like that, and I think it's overall good for the sport.
Yeah, the parity is increased across the board, but to your point, Dave, I mean, it's like I mentioned earlier, I feel like going week to week now, I got to start thinking outside of the box and looking at these games with a more critical eye.
Yeah, man,
We don't know.
We just don't know. Expect.
Yeah, we just don't know. We don't know. And like you said, I think a lot of these coaches, they don't know what to expect. It's just still so many moving pieces. The SEC championship race is all gone to hell now. It's all over the place. I will not be surprised, Dave, if we don't get kind of a wacky title game with some maybe a team in there we didn't expect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but hey, it makes this thing fun, man. This college football season is unhinged. Guys, that's going to do it all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast where you get those. Make sure you follow along on social media and check out our website, secunfiltered.com. We appreciate Cole Thompson taking the time. Obviously, he's off to do his thing covering the NFL. So hope the Texans do well. Dave, it's always a pleasure, my friend. I appreciate you guys, everybody who tuned in, commented, engaged. Thank y'all so much for tuning in as you do each and every single Sunday. And who knows what week 7 will have in store. Again, thank you to all those in Fayetteville. Thank you to Arkansas football. This is an incredible weekend. Had a great time in Fayetteville. I can't wait to get back. And for those asking, next weekend, you may see, Dave, the cup I've been drinking out of. Walk on.
Yeah, it's giving you a hint.
Bistro and bar. If it hasn't given you enough of a hint, we'll see you in Baton Rouge next weekend to watch Ellen, 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 to watch Ellen,
appreciate everybody listening.
to watch Ellen, 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 to watch Ellen.
And Cole, guys, again, week 6, phenomenal. I'm usually one, I don't usually get blown away with much. My wife always gives me hell about that. I was blown away with yesterday's action, specifically in the SEC. So wild weekend, guys. Again, Chris kind of gave you a hint. If you don't know, walk-ons started at LSU. He's going to the Ole Miss LSU game, folks. But, man, what a weekend. But, guys, go like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, guys. We have content coming out the eyeballs all week covering the SEC. Not only football, with basketball season less than a month away as well. And then, obviously, baseball heading into the spring, guys. But for Dave Shumate, Cole Thompson, and Chris Phillips, you have a phenomenal rest of your Sunday. CP, you wanted to add anything? I was closing out.
Hey, I made it to the very end of the show without thinking.
That's what I told him. We were a few words away. We were single-digit words away.
Literally a few words away. Yeah. Anyways, thank you to Arkansas. We'll see you at LSU next weekend. Going to be one hell of a time. The tour has been incredible, and sorry for the technical difficulties. Hey, this college football season, it's unpredictable. Dave, thank you again so much to you. Cole Thompson, we shout him out. Appreciate him. And, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Again, we do this every single Sunday, so make sure you check us out. Stay tuned, and appreciate each and every single one of you. We will catch you all on the other side.